Welcome back to Rugby from the Stands. My goodness, what a game of rugby that was. And actually, before we get to the numbers, can we just take a second for that Haka at the start? They went with Kapa or Pango, and my kids and I were sitting there going, what a powerful Haka that was. And I loved that choice. So, the All Blacks, 34, France, 32. 9 tries. The lead changed hands 5 times. And here's the thing that makes today different from every other video I've done in this series and even from last year. In the preview, I kept having to tell you that we weren't comparing apples to apples because the French numbers came from the top 14 and ours came from Super Rugby. Well, not today. Today, both teams played the same 80 minutes on the same pitch with the same referee. So for the first time, every single chart you're about to see is a straight, honest comparison. 16 of them. Let's get into it. Right, let's start with the score and where the points actually came from. 34-32 to the All Blacks at the new One New Zealand Stadium in Christchurch, with Luke Pearce in the middle. And remember him because I made a prediction about Luke Pearce in the preview video and we are coming back to it. 5 tries to 4, 3 conversions each. And that tells its own little story because we took 5 shots at goal from conversions and made 3. So we left 4 points sitting on the tee in a 2-point game. Damien McKenzie missed the first one. Ruben Love missed one late. France kicked 2 penalty goals to our 1. So France actually outscored us from the tee. And we outscored them with ball in hand. Keep that trade in your head for the whole video because it's basically the story of the match. Now, before the deep charts, here's my favorite new graphic, the momentum worm. It's dead simple to read. Along the bottom on the x-axis, you've got the match minutes from kickoff to the final whistle. And up the side on the y-axis, you've got the points margin. When the line is above 0, New Zealand are in front. And when it drops below 0, France are in front. And look at how this game breathed. Ruben Love is in the sin bin after about 90 seconds. That's a yellow marker right at the start. And Damien Penaud scores before some people had even sat down. First entry, first try. Will Jordan then answers in the 7th minute off an RD quick tap. Peter Lakai levels it at 20. Maxime Luku keeps nudging France ahead with the boot. Then Cam Roigard snipes under the post right before the break. So it's 19-13 at halftime. And the second half is just wave after wave. Antoine Astois scores. France lead. Roigard scores again. We're back in the lead. Then Theo Atisogbe finishes a gorgeous team try. 1-point game. Ruben Love kicks a penalty. Will Jordan scores off turnover ball and we are 9 up with 10 minutes to go. And then Mathieu Jalibert runs in the bonus point try at 77 minutes and suddenly it's 34-32 and I'm not breathing. The All Blacks spent 50 minutes in the lead tonight. France 31. And neither team ever led by more than 9 points. That's the worm telling you this was a proper test match. Okay, now the analytical stuff that you're probably here for. And we begin with the attack shape. How did these two teams actually try to break each other? Along the bottom on the x-axis, we've got post-contact meters per ruck. Why per ruck? Because a ruck in rugby analytics is basically considered the end of a phase. So you're looking at how many phases you had, and per phase, how much post-contact meters did you get. It's a better view compared to just looking at total numbers of post-contact meters, because you really want to see the attack shape. So for every ruck you build, how many meters are you making after contact? That is your wrestle. And up the side on the y-axis, line breaks per 100 rucks. For every 100 rucks, how many times do you actually slice through the defensive line? Again, that's your space finding. The grey dots in the background, and you'll see in these on every team chart tonight, are actually every single test match team performance since 2023. That's 432 games grayed out on this chart just to give us a comparison about how these two teams compared to all the other games of the last 3 seasons, right? So when I say a team is extreme, you can literally see how extreme against 3 years of test matches. Now here's what genuinely surprised me. Both teams tonight are on the left side of that contact line. New Zealand at 2.4 meters per ruck, France at 2.4 meters per ruck as well. Nobody brought a sledgehammer. But look at the line breaks. France broke the line 10.6 times per 100 rucks. We broke it 8.3 times. And the middle of Test rugby is about 6.7. So both teams were finding space at an above average rate while making below average post-contact meters. In the preview, the club data told us that France were battering rams. Heavy carries, contact first. This French team, missing half of those forwards, came out and played like surgeons instead. And honestly, it made for a better game of rugby. So the shape chart says that both teams actually did create opportunities. This next one asks the harder question. So what did you do with your visits? Along the bottom, on the x-axis, visits to the opposition 22. Think of that as how many times you knocked on the door. And on the side, on the y-axis, points per visit. When the door opened, how much did you take? 9 visits each. Both are identical. But New Zealand walked away with 3.7 points every time we entered their 22, and France took 3.2. And to put those numbers in context, again, the average of Test rugby is about 2.5. So both teams tonight were operating well above the typical Test side in the same match, which is why the scoreboard never stopped moving. And I have to own something here, because at halftime, I made a note to myself that said the All Blacks aren't efficient in attack. That was my eyes talking, but the data says the opposite. We were the most efficient team on the park, and France weren't far behind. What my eyes were actually seeing was France's defense forcing us to work 3 or 4 phases longer for the same reward. The efficiency was there. It just never looked easy, because nothing against this French side was easy. Now, for the chart that proves the game plan, kicking philosophy. Along the bottom on the x-axis is kicks per 100 rucks. So relative to how much ball you actually had, how often did you choose to kick it away? And up the side on the y-axis is territory percentage. Did all that kicking or not kicking actually buy you real estate in this game? New Zealand kicked 14 times per 100 rucks tonight. France 19. And the typical Test side is up at around 30 kicks per 100 rucks. So both teams were kicking at way below Test match norms. We kicked the ball 17 times in the entire game and only 6 times in the whole first half. That is a Dave Rennie team saying, we back our skills, we are keeping the ball in hand, and here's the trade. We lost the territory battle 47-53. We deliberately lived without field position because we believed we could score from wherever we were standing. 9 visits at 3.7 points a visit says that bet did pay off. Barely, but it paid. There was one moment in the 41st minute that summed the whole thing up. Roygaard calls Josh Lord into the caterpillar, like a box kick is coming, and then just passes it instead. And Geordie Barrett puts it into French territory only when the picture is right. That was a Dave Rennie special that we just saw. This next chart is my favorite team chart of the night because it broke the theory. Along the bottom on the x-axis, post-contact meters per carry. Are you winning the collisions? And up the side, the y-axis on the percentage of your rucks recycled inside 3 seconds, which basically answers the question, how fast are you playing? And the theory of modern rugby says that these two things travel together. Win the collision and the fast ruck follows because the defense is retreating. Tonight, both teams ripped that theory up. New Zealand recycled 83% of our rucks inside 3 seconds. That's 8 out of 10 rucks was under 3 seconds. France was 78%. That's also very close to 8 out of 10 rucks. The average of Test rugby is 56. 56% of typical Test match rugby ruck speed is at 56%. Today, it was at 83 and 78%. So what you felt and what you saw, helter-skelter rugby, wasn't something you were dreaming. It was real. And neither team was dominating contact. We made 2 meters after contact per carry. France 1.8. So this was a tempo game without collision dominance, which is supposed to be impossible. And both teams were doing it at once. And I ran the numbers on how rare this was because I couldn't quite believe the ruck speeds I was watching. At halftime, we were recycling 94% of our ball inside 3 seconds. 94%. Across every test match in my data set, going back to 2023 to tonight, taking both teams together, this was the second fastest test match we have ever measured. The only game quicker was the All Blacks against England last November. New Zealand's 83% is the fourth fastest single team performance out of 434 games in this dataset. I made a note at the 24th minute just saying the speed and tempo is incredible. So for once, my eyes and the data actually completely agree. Now, the breakdown. And this one needs an honest word, because in the preview, I sold you a Jackal wall. The club numbers said our loose forwards were breakdown kings. Along the bottom on the x-axis, the same fast ruck percentage. How quickly do we recycle our own ball? And up the side is, on the y-axis, turnovers won. How much of their ball are you stealing? Now, 3 turnovers for us, 2 for France all night. Now look at where both dots sit. Far right, below the steal line. Both teams basically declined the Jackal contest. And when you think about it, it makes sense. At the speed this game was played, diving into a ruck you probably can't win just takes you out of a defensive line that's about to get stressed 2 passes later. Both teams chose line speed over taking a chance. So the breakdown edge that I thought that we will have never showed up as steals. It showed up as those recycle speeds instead. The battle happened, it just happened on our ball rather than theirs. I saw Ardy pointing at rucks telling Luke Pearce that the French were sealing off. And honestly, watching it back, both teams knew slowing the game down for even 1 second was worth a penalty risk. Defense next, and this is where France earned every bit of respect I'm about to give them. Along the bottom, on the x-axis, total tackles made, your workload. Up the side, on the y-axis, is dominant tackles. How many of those tackles physically knocked the carrier backwards? France made 192 tackles tonight, and 16 of them were dominant. We made 182, and 7 were dominant. So similar workloads, but France won the physical exchanges more than twice as often. And that is the preview coming true, because the club data told us that France had more hitmen. That identity survived the fight to Christchurch. The reason my halftime notes were full of nerves is sitting right there in those 16 dominant hits. Every time the game felt like it was tilting, it was because a French shoulder had just stopped one of our carries dead. Now the clean engine chart, which asks whether your foundations held and whether you shot yourself in the foot. Along the bottom on the x-axis, total set piece win percentage. And this is the clever one, because it weights together your scrums, your lineouts, and your restarts received, all on your own ball. Up the side, penalties conceded. One caveat before anyone shouts at me, this only measures your own put-ins. So a scrum that you concede penalties on the opposition feed doesn't show up here. Now, New Zealand won 91% of our own set-piece ball tonight. France 84. And the penalties, 9 each. Dead level. Now here's my favorite callback of the night. In the preview, I told you Luke Pearce likes the game to flow, and that a flowing game suits us. 9 penalties each is a clean test match. And get this, only 5 penalties total in the entire second half. 3 of ours and 2 of theirs. 2 teams playing at world record pace, and the whistle basically disappeared after halftime. That's exactly the game we hoped Pearce would referee, and both teams took full advantage of it. Last team chart, and this one actually answers a question that I asked during halftime. How do France stay in this? How do they beat the All Blacks? On the left, where each team lived, the share of your own possession you spent in each zone of the pitch. And on the right, the clutch panel. Who actually controlled the endgame? France spent 42% of their possession inside their own 22 tonight. 42%. We spent 27% in ours, and they still scored 32 points. That is the stat behind my note at the 58th minute. You cannot let this French team have the ball anywhere, because they are lethal from absolutely anywhere, including under their own posts. And then the clutch panel, which hurts a little. Minutes in the lead, us 50, them 31. So we controlled the night. But the last 10 minutes, France had 58% of the ball and won them 7 points to 5. In my notes at the 60th minute, it says, I'm not feeling confident, and the 60-minute me was right. France finished this game stronger, and if it had gone 5 more minutes, honestly, I don't know which way this video goes. Right, the player charts. And we start with the one this whole series was built on, carrier DNA. Along the bottom on the x-axis, for those of you who are new, are defenders beaten per carry, which is basically your footwork, your evasion, how good are you at avoiding defenders. Up the side on the y-axis is meters per carry. And a quick note, at match level, Rugby Pass actually doesn't give us post-contact meters per player. So this is total meters, but it still separates the steppers from the battering rams beautifully. Everyone here had at least 4 carries. And there's one dot floating above the entire chart, and it belongs to Ruben Love. 4 carries, 50 meters, that is 12.5 meters every time he touched the ball. And he beat 5 defenders doing it, which is more than 1 per carry. He got binned in the second minute, came back, ran the attack, kicked 5 times from hand, missed 1 shot at goal, and produced the best per carry attacking numbers on the pitch. Tonight was some audition for the young fella. Is Ruben Love our new DC? I know it's too early to say, but the way he was running the show was genuinely very, very impressive. Beyond him, Roygaard. He beat 6 defenders on 8 carries, which for a 9 is absolutely outrageous. And on the French side, look at Fabien Broboirie. During the game, I made a note saying that he looked a bit quiet, and the chart is telling me off because 11 carries at 7.8 meters each is not quiet. It's just efficient in a way that doesn't make highlight reels. Max Spring is up there too at over 7 meters a carry, now the enforcer map for the defenders. Along the bottom on the x-axis, tackles per 80 minutes. Workload adjusted for time on the pitch so that the bench players get a fair look. Up the side on the y-axis are dominant tackles percentage. When you hit, does the carrier go backwards? And when you tackle, how many tackles out of your total tackles do you push someone backwards? And for those of you who are saying, hey, if I only tackled 1 and it was dominant, and that's the only tackle that I made the entire game, then I would have 100% dominance rate. And that's not fair. It's going to screw the data. I agree. That's why on this chart, you have to have 6+ tackles and you've got to have 20+ minutes played to qualify. And the king of this chart is Yoram Moefana. 26% of his tackles were dominant. 1 in 4 of the man's hits sent someone backwards, and nobody else with a full shift came even close. Hugo Oredu at 18% behind him. And here's what I have to concede. In the preview, the midfield collision mismatch was my biggest worry. And even though the names changed, the French midfield still won the collision war. Moefana is the proof. Our story on this chart is volume instead. Jordie Barrett is our standout. Big workload and 15% dominance. Comfortably our most physical defender tonight. And down in the bottom right corner, there's a cameo I loved. Xavier Numia on debut. He made 9 tackles in 27 minutes. That's a rate of nearly 27 per 80 minutes. No dominant hits, just non-stop work from a debutant prop who did not want the night to end. Now let's move on to Jackal ROI. You're looking at risk versus reward at the breakdown. Along the bottom, penalties conceded. Up the side are turnovers won. Top right corner is where the breakdown kings live. The guys who steal your ball and give you nothing back. Ardi is the best dot on this chart. He gave you 2 turnovers, 1 penalty, 17 tackles, and a full 80-minute shift. Marco Gazzotti was France's version, a steal and a busy night from their young number 8. Broboirie and Billy Proctor share a spot as the genuinely clean thieves, a turnover each for 0 penalties. At the other end, 2 dots to talk about. Demba Bamba gave away 4 penalties on his own, which is the loose cannon corner all to himself, and Luke Jacobson conceded 2. And I'm only mentioning that because at the 15-minute, I was mourning about Jacobson's discipline into my notes. Let's move on to attack now. Creator versus finisher, or both. Along the bottom on the x-axis, try assists per 80 minutes, which means do you make tries for other people? And up the side on the y-axis are tries per 80. Do you finish them yourself? Everyone here on this chart either scored or assisted tonight. The corner that matters belongs to Jordie Barrett. 2 try assists, the most on the pitch. And this is where I get to tell you my favorite story of the week. I don't know if you guys follow Brendan Nell. He's a South African journalist who gives us a proper front seat view of most press conferences or captain's runs. And in one of those captain runs, a couple of days ago, he shared a video where the All Blacks were having their captain's run training session this week, and we watched Jordie Barrett practicing that exact cutout long pass over and over. And then tonight, that exact pass put Will Jordan away in the 7th minute. The finishing column is Roygaard and Jordan with 2 tries each. Lakai with his first, and for France, Jalibert and Atisogbe both finished with a try and an assist each, which is the complete attacking weapon profile. And honestly, nobody who watched them tonight would argue. On the Playmaker chart, these are 10s, 12s and 15s only. That's by design, so don't come looking for Roygaard here. Along the bottom on the x-axis are defenders beaten per carry, which is basically giving you your running threat. Up the side for try assists per 80 are the creators. They create opportunities for others to score. And the size of each bubble is kicks per 80. So the bigger the bubble, the more that player used the boot. 3 jobs on one chart. Jalibert is the closest thing to the actual triple threat tonight. A try assist, a defender beaten every 3rd carry, 7 kicks, and the try that won France the bonus point. Ruben Love is the extreme runner, that 1.25 defenders beaten per carry, sitting way out right, with 5 kicks and no assist yet. Jordie Barrett is the quiet creator at inside centre, 2 assists, barely kicked, and Anton Astoy deserves a special mention because his night was bizarre. On in the 6th minute for the spring HIA, he was back off, then back on again for good after half-time, and in between he scored a try and kicked the conversion that nearly stole this game. And the last chart, the 2-way contact beast. The man of the match chart for the forwards and the collision backs. Along the bottom on the x-axis are meters per carries. So are you winning the contact with the ball? And up the side are dominant tackle percentage, winning contact without it. Top right is the elite zone. The players who won the collisions in both directions, with the ball and without. For those of you who might argue that small numbers might skew the data, please note that you need at least 4+ carries and 6+ tackles to qualify on this chart. France own this chart. Moefana at the top, Oradu and Montagnu behind him. Spring and Broboirie are out wide with big carry numbers and dominant hits on top. Our best 2-way player was Jordie Barrett. And behind him, it thins out fast. Our entire bottom row on this chart carried well, but won almost nothing dominant in defense. So let me say this, because France deserve it said plainly. They were magnificent tonight. They came to Christchurch missing Mavaka, Miafu, Gaeton, Intermac, Dupont, half the names from my preview charts. They gave a debut to Barnaby Massa. They lost their fullback to an HIA inside 6 minutes, and they still won the collisions, won the last 10 minutes, and left with 2 bonus points. If that's their second string, November is going to be genuinely frightening. So let me pull the whole night together. And as always, please tell me where I'm wrong, because I'm wrong most often than not. So this is my read. First, the accountability, because I put predictions on the record in the preview. I said All Blacks by 2 scores. We won by 2 points. So I'm taking half a mark and no more. I said the midfield collisions battle was my biggest worry, and it was real. Moefana and Broboirie won that channel even without the names I was worried about. I said our breakdown edge would decide it, and it did, but not the way I predicted. It showed up as ruck speed and not steals. And I said Luke Pearce would let it flow, and 9 penalties each with 5 in the whole second half is exactly that. 3.5 out of 5. I'll take it. And the big picture is the word I kept coming back to all game. This was optimistic rugby. from both teams. That's the word that's been used around this All Blacks environment. And you can now see it in the data. The second fastest test we've measured in 3 years. Both attacks scoring above 3 points a visit. 17 kicks from us all night. And a French side playing from their own 22 like it was our 22. France kept winning the collisions and we kept winning the next 3 seconds. Over 80 minutes, the 3 seconds won by exactly 2 points. Where does that leave the Rennie era after one game? Cautiously buzzing, honestly. The attack looks further ahead than I expected in week 1. Love and Roygaard look like the future arriving early, and 4 debutants got real minutes in a 2-point test. But the two-way contact chart is a warning sign with a French accent, and the clutch panel says that we still don't close games the way that the great All Black sides did. Optimism with some homework. I'll take that in July. That's the deep dive, guys. 2 things for the comments. First, which numbers from tonight go straight onto your season's watch list? Are you looking at Love's 12.5 meters per carry, or Moefana's 26% dominance, or a test match with 94% fast ball in the first half? And the second is an awkward question to ask. If France turned up today with Movaka, Miafu, Dupont, Ramos, and the full cavalry, does tonight's win age well? Do we win tonight or not? French fans, you know I want your view especially. Your second string, the so-called second string, just went toe-to-toe with us in Christchurch. And I want to know what you're feeling. If you enjoyed this, hit subscribe. The response to this chart series has been unbelievable, and it genuinely keeps a small channel going. The Springboks and England get exactly the same treatment next, and after what I've just watched, I cannot wait. This is Rugby from the Stands, or at least Rugby from my bedroom. See you in the next one.